Ever wonder why you always attract the same type of person? Why your relationships seem to follow the same painful script? Why that one characteristic in your partner irritates you so much, destabilizes you in a way you just can't explain? In November of 2024, the Huberman Lab welcomed Dr. Allan Schore, one of the world's leading experts in attachment and neurodevelopment. And what he revealed perfectly confirms what Carl Jung discovered over a century ago. What lives in your shadow controls your relationships. And you don't even realize it. I'm not talking about some airy-fairy metaphor here. I'm talking about neurochemistry, about patterns of brain activation that were shaped before you were even 2 years old, about repressed traits that your prefrontal cortex hides, but that your amygdala instantly recognizes in others and reacts to with fear, anger, or obsessive desire. Jung wrote back in 1912, "What you resist persists, what you deny projects. What you refuse to see in yourself, you will either attract or attack in others." Over 100 years later, neuroscience is validating those words. If you're stuck in toxic relationship patterns, if you constantly feel drawn to people who hurt you, or if your relationships always end the same painful way, this video will reveal the exact mechanism behind it, and more importantly, how to break the cycle. Before we go any further, I need you to understand something fundamental. This isn't about blaming your parents, your exes, and your society. It's about responsibility, about seeing what's been blinding you all this time. Because from the moment you see it, you can change it. Let's start with the concept Jung considered both the most dangerous and the most liberating in human psychology, the shadow self. Jung defined the shadow self as those parts of our psyche that we find disturbing when brought to consciousness. They're the traits that contradict our values or threaten our sense of self-worth. Typical shadow issues include our capacity for jealousy, envy, rage, lust, desire for control, fear of abandonment, the need for approval. But here's the detail that most people miss. You didn't choose what went into your shadow. That was decided for you before the age of 6, based on what your family and environment considered acceptable or unacceptable. If you grew up in a house where expressing anger was forbidden, your anger went into the shadow. If crying was shameful, your vulnerability went into the shadow. If being ambitious was considered selfish, your desire for success went into the shadow. Dr. James Hollis, a Jungian psychoanalyst who was also a guest on the Huberman Lab in May of 2024, explained exactly how this works. Family dynamics, trauma, attachment styles, combined with our unique gifts and the shadow side, propel us along particular trajectories in life. Trajectories that sometimes take us where we want to go, but other times lead us completely down the wrong path. Now comes the part that few are prepared to hear. The shadow doesn't just sit quietly because you've decided to ignore it. It's autonomous. It has a will of its own. And it will find a way to express itself whether you want it to or not. And the most common way the shadow expresses itself is through your relationships. Jung called this projection. When you repress a trait in yourself, you start to see it in others with a disproportionate intensity. If you've repressed your anger, you'll attract angry people and become obsessed with how aggressive they are. If you've repressed your fear of abandonment, you'll attract emotionally unavailable people and become desperate trying to make them stay. But hold on, because what Huberman discovered about this goes even deeper. Dr. Allan Schore revealed in that November 2024 episode that attachment patterns are formed in the first 24 months of life, and that they're established through right brain to right brain synchronization between the child and the caregiver. The mother, Schore explained, is primarily responsible for regulating the baby's emotional and physiological states through non-verbal communication, facial expression, tone of voice, gestures. This means your brain was literally shaped for certain relational patterns before you had any conscious memories, before you even had the language to process what was happening. If your mother was frequently anxious, your brain calibrated to anxiety as the normal state of relationship. If she was emotionally absent, your brain learned that love means absence. If she was unpredictable, you developed a hypersensitive radar for mood swings in others. And here's the connection with Jung that will blow your mind. Let me give you a concrete example of how this works in practice. Imagine a woman who grew up with an emotionally cold mother. This mother rarely showed affection, was always busy, never validated her daughter's emotions. What happened in that child's brain in the first 24 months? Her right hemisphere learned that love means distance, that emotional connection is dangerous because it leads to rejection, that showing affection is shameful because it was never reciprocated. She grows up, becomes an adult, and starts dating. And what happens? She systematically attracts emotionally unavailable men. And when she finds a man who is genuinely available, she feels an inexplicable anxiety. She feels like something is wrong, that it's too boring, that there's a lack of chemistry. There's no lack of chemistry. What's missing is the insecure attachment pattern she's addicted to. What she calls chemistry is actually the activation of the same circuits of anxiety and desperate pursuit that were burned into her in childhood. And where's the shadow here? It's the part of her that internalized her mother's coldness, the part that's also emotionally unavailable, but that she projects onto the men she attracts. She criticizes them for being cold, without realizing she's repeating exactly her mother's pattern. Now imagine the other side. A man who grew up with an angry and unpredictable father. His right hemisphere learned that relationships are minefields, that you need to constantly read the other person's mood to survive, that expressing your needs can trigger an explosion. He grows up, becomes an adult, and what happens? He attracts controlling women. And he becomes the nice guy who never expresses anger, never sets boundaries, never says no. Until the day he explodes in a way even he doesn't recognize. His shadow contains all the repressed anger, all the aggression he saw in his father and swore he'd never repeat. But because he hasn't integrated that anger, it comes out in distorted ways. Passive-aggressive sarcasm, punitive silence, and occasionally, explosions that seem to come out of nowhere. These two examples perfectly illustrate what Dr. Allan Schore explained to Huberman, what Allan Schore refers to as attachment patterns. Carl Jung called complexes, specific neural networks, that form around intense emotional experiences in childhood, and then operate autonomously, outside the control of the conscious ego. Jung wrote, "We can see the mischievous tricks of complexes whenever there are exaggerated reactions, when we are seized by a sudden rage or an unexplainable sadness, when we engage in toxic relationship patterns, when we experience common symptoms of anxiety and depression. Although complexes are unconscious, they aren't unrelated to the ego, and that's why it can feel as if there's a foreign body pulling the strings and manipulating our every move. Have you ever felt that? Like something inside you is on autopilot in your relationships, like you know you're doing something destructive, but you can't seem to stop. Those are your complexes operating. They are the attachment patterns etched into your right hemisphere before the age of 2. And it's the shadow self that you never integrated, projecting onto your partner. Hold on to that, because it's going to make sense in a bit when I reveal the integration protocol. Now, let me explain the exact neurological mechanism of how this happens. Neuroimaging studies have revealed that when we see faces of people from a different background than our own, it often activates the amygdala more than seeing people from the same group. The amygdala plays an important role in both our legitimate fears and our unconscious biases. But here's the crucial detail. That same mechanism applies to personality traits that we've repressed in ourselves. When you encounter someone who openly expresses a trait you've repressed, your amygdala fires off an alarm signal. Your prefrontal cortex, responsible for social processing, can evaluate and label people outside of your awareness. These decisions are made at a subconscious level, before you engage in more conscious and controlled processing. In other words, you decide that you hate or love someone before consciously thinking about it. And that decision is based on what the person is reflecting from your own shadow self. When two people enter a relationship, Their shadow selves inevitably interact. Explain Jungian researchers. This can manifest as power struggles, recurring arguments, feelings of being misunderstood, or a sensation of constantly being triggered by your partner. But here comes the turn that Jung considered the key to healthy relationships. These conflicts, although painful, are actually opportunities for growth. The key is to recognize that the intense emotions triggered by our partner are often related to our own shadow self. Instead of blaming the partner, Jungian psychology encourages us to look inward and ask, what is this situation activating in me? What part of myself am I seeing reflected in my partner's behavior? If you felt a click just now, if something made sense in a way it never has before, pay attention, because what I'm about to reveal about the integration protocol can literally transform all your relationships. But first, I need to tell you what Huberman discovered about the possibility of changing these patterns. For years, science believed that attachment patterns were fixed, that what was etched in the first 24 months was permanent. But Dr. Allan Schore brought a crucial revelation. Therapeutic relationships can help individuals reconnect early attachment patterns by creating new experiences of right brain to right brain synchronization. That means you are not doomed to repeat the patterns of your childhood. Your brain is neuroplastic. It can change, but to change, you need to first see what was invisible. Neuroplasticity research shows that different experiences, both short and long term, can change the structure of the brain. Social attitudes and expectations, like stereotypes, can change how the brain processes information. This means that our unconscious biases are not permanently etched in us. So, how do you begin to integrate the shadow self and liberate your relationships? Before I give you the protocol, I need to alert you to something crucial. Many people try to work on their shadow self the wrong way. They identify a shadow trait and try to eliminate it. They try to be less jealous and less controlling, less needy. This never works. Jung was very clear about this. The shadow self cannot be destroyed. It's part of you. Trying to destroy it is trying to amputate a part of your psyche. The result is always an even more violent return of that which was repressed. The only solution is integration, recognizing the shadow self, accepting it as part of you, and finding healthy ways to express that energy. If your shadow self contains anger, you don't need to eliminate anger. You need to learn to express it in a conscious and constructive way. If your shadow self contains jealousy, you don't need to pretend you don't feel jealous. You need to understand what the jealousy is trying to protect and communicate that to your partner. Dr. James Hollis explained on Huberman Lab that many people who seek therapy arrive with emotions locked behind a defensive wall of armor. This armor prevents closeness with oneself and others, true intimacy, and healthy conflict. Positive and negative feelings are projected onto others, and with the projection goes the ability to think clearly about situations and relationships. Integration removes that armor, not to leave you vulnerable, but to allow real connection. Jung left a map. Huberman validated the neurological path. And I'm going to give you the hybrid protocol that unites the two. First step, identify your projections. Every time you have an intense emotional reaction to someone, especially anger, contempt, or obsessive attraction, stop and ask, what trait is this person showing me? Does this trait exist in me, in some way that I've denied? If someone deeply irritates you for being controlling, ask, in what areas of my life am I controlling in ways that I don't admit? If you feel obsessively attracted to someone emotionally unavailable, ask, in what aspects am I emotionally unavailable to myself? Second step, trace it to the origin. Use what Huberman calls conscious interoception. Sit in silence. Focus on the bodily sensation that this person provokes in you. Where in the body do you feel it? Is it a tension in the chest, a knot in the stomach, a pressure in the throat? Now ask, when was the first time I felt this? Let your mind wander to old memories. Frequently, the origin is in some moment before the age of 7. Think back to a time and a moment when you learned a certain trait was unacceptable in your family, in your community. Now let's move on to the third step. Differentiate the past from the present. This is key. Neurologically speaking, your brain is reacting to your partner as if they were your mother, your father, or whoever shaped your attachment patterns early on. You need to create a conscious separation. Say this out loud. What I'm feeling belongs to the past. My partner is not my mother. My partner is not my father. I am an adult now, and I can choose how to respond. It might sound simple, but this conscious declaration actually creates new neural pathways that separate the automatic reaction from the chosen response. This step is rooted in something neuroscience calls memory reconsolidation. When you access an old emotional memory and add new information to it, you can literally rewrite how it's stored in your brain. The statement you make out loud serves as this new information. It's like an update to the system. Your brain starts to understand that the present situation is different from the past situation, even if the emotional triggers feel similar. Dr. Andrew Huberman has discussed this extensively. In several Huberman Lab episodes about fear and trauma, he explained that exposure to the emotional trigger, combined with new cognitive information, reconfigures the circuits that link the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. Over time, the automatic reaction becomes less intense, and the conscious response becomes more accessible. Let's move to step 4. Practice conscious right hemisphere communication. Dr. Allan Schore has demonstrated that healing happens through experiences of right hemisphere synchronization. This means nonverbal communication, a calm tone of voice, gentle eye contact and reassuring touch, presence without judgment. When you're in conflict with your partner, before you discuss the content, focus on the connection. Look them in the eyes. Breathe together. Touch their hand. This activates attachment systems in a way that words alone simply cannot. Step 5. The Jungian question. Every night, before you go to sleep, ask yourself, what part of my shadow self did my relationships show me today? What did I project onto the other person that actually belongs to me? Don't judge the answers, just observe. Over time, patterns will emerge. You'll start to see the same traits popping up again and again. These are the prime candidate spots for integration. If you felt that these words resonated deeply with you, if something shifted in your understanding of why your relationships follow the patterns they do, YouTube has placed a little golden heart right below this video. It's called Super Thanks. This channel exists to do what academia refuses to do. Unite the profound wisdom of Carl Jung with the neuroscientific validation of Dr. Andrew Huberman. Each video requires hours of research into scientific studies and Jungian works. And most people don't have the courage to connect these two worlds because it means questioning both traditional psychology and shallow neuroscience of protocols without depth. When you click on that golden heart, you're not just supporting a channel, you're saying, keep revealing what academia hides. You're financing the next revelation. You're positioning yourself as someone who wants deep knowledge, not superficial answers. Super Thanks isn't about money. It's about identity. It's you saying, I'm part of those who unite deep psychology with neuroscience. I'm a seeker of truth. Now let me tell you what happens when you really integrate the shadow self into your relationships. Carl Jung described the process as one of the most humbling and liberating experiences of human life. Humbling, because you have to admit that the problem you saw in the other person was in you all along. Liberating, Because you finally stop being a hostage to patterns you didn't even know you had. It's impossible to stop projecting completely. Experts explain, because the psyche is alive, and as our conscious attitude changes, the unconscious reacts. But we can create a healthy relationship with our projections by understanding them as a message from the unconscious. The key is to treat every irritation in a relationship as an invitation, every conflict as a mirror, every intense reaction as a map to parts of yourself that need attention. Withdrawing projections requires taking responsibility and realizing how often we act in the exact ways that we condemn. This leads to moral differentiation. You stop dividing the world into us good guys and them bad guys. You start to see the full humanity with light and shadow in yourself and in others. And this changes everything. In your relationships, you stop looking for the perfect partner who will complete you. You start working on completing yourself. You stop running away from people who challenge you. You start to see the challenge as an opportunity for growth. Let me tell you what happens neurologically. When you integrate the shadow self, neuroimaging studies show that the connection between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex changes. During the process of emotional regulation, when you practice reappraisal, which is basically what Carl Jung called integration, there's convergent connectivity between the amygdala and the left ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. What does this mean? In practical terms, your amygdala stops firing alarm signals every time it encounters someone who reflects your shadow self, instead of reacting automatically with fear, anger, or obsessive desire. Your prefrontal cortex can intervene. You gain a fraction of a second of choice between stimulus and response. That fraction of a second is everything. It's the difference between exploding at your partner and pausing to ask, what's really happening? It's the difference between entering yet another toxic relationship and recognizing the pattern before you get involved. It's the difference between repeating your parents' history and writing a new one. Dr. Andrew Huberman talks a lot about this gap between stimulus and response. He calls it executive control. Carl Jung called it the transcendent function. It's the moment when the conscious ego can observe the complex in action instead of being possessed by it. But here's the detail that few understand. This gap doesn't appear magically. It's built through deliberate practice. And the most effective practice is precisely using your relationships as mirrors. Dr. James Hollis summarized it this way on Huberman Lab. True life begins when you take responsibility for your shadow self, when you stop blaming others for what actually belongs to you, when you integrate what was disintegrated. Only then can your relationships be based on real love, not on projection and need. I know that much of what I've shared here may have activated something in you. It may have brought to mind specific relationships, mainly specific people, specific pains. That's your shadow self responding. That's your unconscious mind recognizing the truth. The question now is, what are you going to do with it? You could close this video and keep living on autopilot. You could keep attracting the same patterns, repeating the same conflicts, blaming the same people. Or you could start today. You could grab a notebook and write down, what are the traits that irritate me the most in other people? And then ask yourself with brutal honesty, in what ways do I possess these same traits? Let me give you a practical exercise that combines Carl Jung and Andrew Huberman's teachings. Tonight, before you go to sleep, think about the most painful relationship in your life. It could be an ex, a parent, a close friend, someone who hurt you deeply. Now, list 3 traits of that person that wounded you the most. Be specific. Don't just say she was a bad person. Say she was emotionally unavailable, or he was controlling, or she made me feel like I was never enough. Take those 3 traits and ask Jung's question, in what ways do I, myself, exhibit these same traits? In what moments have I been emotionally unavailable to someone? In what situations have I been controlling? When have I made someone else feel like they weren't enough? If you do this with genuine honesty, you'll have one of the most uncomfortable and most liberating experiences of your life. You'll confront your shadow self. You'll finally understand why you attracted that particular person into your life, and you'll gain the power to choose differently next time. Now, here's where Andrew Huberman comes in. After you've completed that mental exercise, engage in a breathing practice to calm your nervous system. Physiological sigh, 2 short sniffs through the nose, followed by a long exhale through the mouth. Repeat that 4 or 5 times. This allows your prefrontal cortex, that higher-level thinking part of your brain, to process what your amygdala, the emotional center, is feeling. It prevents you from going into defensive mode and rejecting what you've discovered. It creates the ideal neural state for integration. Carl Jung famously said that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Andrew Huberman, through Huberman Lab, has shown us that your brain can change at any age. If you create the right experiences, your relationships are not destiny, they're reflections, and you have the power to change what is being reflected back to you. Now tell me in the comments, what's the most painful relationship pattern you've noticed repeating in your life? And after watching this video, can you see which trait of your shadow self might be behind it? Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Others who are on this journey will recognize themselves in your words, and that recognition creates community. It creates healing. Jung mapped the shadow self. Andrew Huberman validated the neuroscience behind it. Now you have the map and the compass. I want to leave you with one final thought. Every relationship in your life has been perfect, not in the sense of being easy or happy, but in the sense of being exactly the mirror you needed at that moment. Every person who hurt you was showing you a part of yourself that needed to be seen. Every painful pattern was inviting you to a deeper level of self-awareness. This doesn't mean that you deserve to suffer. It means that the suffering held a message, and now, you know how to read that message. The next time someone irritates you deeply, the next time you feel that disproportionate anger or that obsessive attraction, stop, breathe, and ask yourself, what is this person showing me about myself? That simple question can transform every relationship in your life, not just the romantic ones, but all of them, with your parents, your children, your friends, your colleagues, everyone. Because the truth is, no one can provoke an emotion in you that doesn't already exist within you. No one can touch a wound that isn't already there. And no one can free you from a pattern that you refuse to see. The question is, will you use it? Until the next video, where I'll reveal why those who avoid conflict explode in unexpected ways, and what Carl Jung predicted about this that Andrew Huberman validated in the lab. Remember, what lives in your shadow controls your relationships. Until you decide to control the shadow,